Oftentimes in criminal cases, it can be difficult for the prosecution to prove that a crime has occurred when there is no body. Without this kind of evidence, the defense can easily argue that there is plenty of room for doubt. Perhaps the victim simply went missing of their own accord. As a result, historically, it has been extremely tough to get a conviction in a murder case without a body. However, with the advancement in forensic technology, we are seeing more and more cases which achieve this. In today's episode, we'll be looking at 2 killers convicted in cases with no bodies. Kenandi Bennett. On September 29, 2002, Vartasha McCullough reported to Kmart staff that her 4-year-old daughter, Kenandi Bennett, was missing. According to McCullough, the pair had visited the Kmart store in Whiteville, North Carolina at around 5 p.m., at which time the girl disappeared. Initially, McCullough claimed that Kenandi had disappeared from an aisle in the store, but she later stated that she entered the Kmart thinking the 4-year-old was behind her, but turned around to find that she was gone. McCullough and her daughter lived in Conway, South Carolina, but were on a trip to visit Keenan's uncle in Whiteville. Although staff had made the call to emergency services, they noted that McCullough did not want them to do so. Local law enforcement immediately began searching the Kmart store and the area surrounding it, but grew suspicious. When they were unable to find any witnesses who had seen McCullough with Kenanda, although there were CCTV cameras in the shop, there were no signs of the 4-year-old on the footage. In fact, investigators could find no evidence that the young girl had even arrived in the state. No one except for her parents, McCullough and Eddie Bennett Jr., who went by the name Kevin, had seen her in the 2 days before she disappeared. Authorities searched the couple's car, but there was no child seat in it and no other signs that a young child had been present except a single Matchbox toy car, which they found wedged under a seat. As law enforcement officers became more doubtful about the McCullough story, they were approached by further witnesses from the couple's hometown, who claimed that they had seen Kenanda with bruises on her shoulder and face just days before she vanished. When asked about them, the 4-year-old said, "My mommy did it." While one witness did confront Kenanda's mother, McCullough told them, "I'm going to whip her ass for telling you," further fueling this idea. A second witness reported seeing cuts on the child's body and marks that looked as if they'd been caused by a strap. And Kenanda's grandparents had become so concerned for her welfare that on September 29th, the very day she went missing, they told the police in Conway that they suspected the 4-year-old was being abused. They had not seen Kenanda in a week, and before contacting police, they went to confront their daughter with their suspicions. But while they heard someone moving around inside her apartment, nobody answered the door. Investigators noted that both of Kenanda's parents seemed uninterested in her case and never asked for any updates beyond the first week of the investigation. Additionally, McCullough failed a polygraph test regarding her daughter's disappearance, while Kenanda's father, Kevin Bennett, refused to take one, although both had samples of their blood and saliva taken. According to the authorities, both were uncooperative and both had inconsistencies in their stories. When McCullough was told that she had failed her polygraph, she reportedly cried. An officer said to her, "We both know that whatever happened to that child did not happen in North Carolina. It happened in that apartment, didn't it?" Here, Kenanda's mother reportedly nodded. However, when she was asked to take them to where the body was, she told them she couldn't. After regaining her composure, McCullough retracted her previous admission and maintained that she had lost her daughter while at the Kmart store. When the police searched the family's home in Conway, things got worse. Investigators noted that the home had been sanitized with bleach, the smell still lingering in the air. 3 bottles of the substance, a damp mop, and several towels lay in plain sight. McCullough claimed that she was cleaning the apartment in preparation for an upcoming inspection by housing authorities, but officers believed she was attempting to clean up a crime scene. Searches of the home turned up transfer stains, which are stains left behind when fluid splatters are wiped, which matched Kenanda's DNA. Authorities said that the scene would suggest that a physical assault had taken place. Furthermore, Kenanda's toys and clothing had been thrown out as if her parents didn't believe she'd be coming home. And both McCullough and Bennett used past tense when talking about their missing daughter. In February of 2003, Kenanda's parents were arrested and charged with homicide by child abuse in connection with their daughter's case. Investigators claim that the DNA evidence found in the apartment proved that the 4-year-old had died in Conway and had never even set foot in South Carolina. This, combined with the numerous witness statements about Keenan's abuse, led to the couple being charged. Around the same time, however, the parents accused the police of racism as they felt they did not conduct enough searches for their daughter. 2 years later, in October of 2005, Bennett's charges were dropped due to insufficient evidence. McCullough, however, was charged with more crimes, including unlawful neglect of a child and inflicting grievous bodily harm on a child. Throughout her trial, McCullough maintained her innocence. The prosecution theorized that Kenanda's death was unintentional and that her mother had panicked and attempted to conceal the crime. However, the mother of one's defense said that McCullough had always maintained that she was not guilty and that the state has no evidence to the contrary. Despite this, the jury deliberated for just 4 hours before returning a guilty verdict. McCullough was convicted of all charges and sentenced to 20 years in prison. Reportedly, she burst into tears and clutched a Bible upon hearing this verdict, and her family appeared to be visibly upset by the news. McCullough's father, the one who'd reported his granddaughter's abuse to the police, believes his daughter is innocent. In the years since, McCullough has never told investigators what happened or where Kenandiai's body is. She is described as a clever and well-mannered young girl who could read simple words and count to 30. She loved SpongeBob SquarePants. Investigators believe that her father was involved with her disappearance and have said that if new evidence comes to light, they will be pursuing charges against him. Vadasha McCullough is due to be released from prison in 2023. Kenanda's case was the first time in South Carolina history that a case had gone to trial for a child's murder without a body. Chamberlain. Thora Afton Chamberlain was last seen outside Campbell High School in Campbell, California, having just finished her classes for the afternoon of November 2nd, 1945. The 14-year-old planned to attend a football game later in the day, but while leaving the establishment, she was stopped on Winchester Road by a man in a vehicle. Classmates saw the teenager wearing a coat, blue sweater, white blouse, and red skirt, speaking with the man who looked as if he was a serviceman as he wore a Navy uniform. The man was asking her to babysit his sister's children for the afternoon as they needed someone last minute. Thora, unaware of the danger of getting into strangers' vehicles, got into the man's car. She was never seen or heard from again. It wasn't long before authorities found their prime suspect. 31-year-old Thomas Henry McMonigal, a career criminal, began claiming responsibility for Thora's murder. At first, police were skeptical because he gave multiple varying accounts of the crime, that he stabbed her, shot her, strangled her, or that she fell out of his car, died accidentally, or that he didn't even kill her at all. McMonigal's arrest record included charges for assaults, vagrancy, and attempted rape. He had previously attacked another young girl, which is what made investigators look into him as a potential suspect. Reportedly, the family of this young girl had declined to press charges. After becoming the main suspect in the disappearance of Thora Chamberlain, McMonigal fled to his father's home in Illinois. On December 6th, he returned to California, taking a bus to San Francisco. He attempted to take his own life on the bus by overdosing on sleeping pills, but he soon recovered after being treated at a hospital. Immediately following his discharge, he was arrested by the FBI. Several of Thora's classmates identified him as the man in the car who was speaking to her. At some point, he claimed that he had simply asked her for directions and they had driven around together, so she could show him where he wanted to go. He said he later became drowsy and pulled over to sleep. And when he awoke, Thora was gone. It was quickly discovered that McMonigal was not an ex-serviceman, but rather he had stolen a foot locker from one which contained the Navy-issued clothing and military medals, which he was seen wearing on the day Thora vanished. The locker was recovered from the garage of his home. Eventually, the 31-year-old told the authorities that he had shot the teenager accidentally while she was in the car, and she had bled on the upholstery. He later ripped out the fabric and buried it. The FBI gathered this physical evidence from where it was buried in a drainage ditch near McMonigal's workplace and found that, just as he said, it was stained with human blood. A bullet hole was also discovered in the door of his car, which was also consistent with his statement. The bullet was found buried in his garden by the FBI, and they confirmed that it had been fired from his .32 caliber Colt revolver. Much like his differing statements about what happened to Thoreau, McMonigal gave varying accounts about what happened to her body afterwards. In one story, he said he'd thrown it off a steep 350-foot cliff known as the Devil's Slide, which overlooked Half Moon Bay on the coast. This version is the most widely believed. Divers attempted to search for the body, but to no avail. However, one journalist in 1945 noted it was possible the force of the water had broken Thor's body apart. Searches of the cliff did, however, turn up 2 pairs of socks, one blue and one red, which matched the 14-year-old's clothing the day she vanished. The socks were located in 2 different crevices partway down the cliff face, and the teenager's parents identified them. As McMonigal had been working on a construction site at the time of Thor's disappearance, authorities suspected he'd used it as a dumping site. And sure enough, they discovered that he'd sought permission from his boss to fill in a nearby ditch with dirt and concrete blocks. Beneath the debris, investigators found Thor's shoes, school books, paper, binder, and her cowbell. McMonigal went on to tell authorities that her clothes were buried in his garden, but an excavation of it turned up no further evidence of the missing 14-year-old. Ultimately, although Thor's body was never found, McMonigal was charged with her murder. Prosecutors theorized that he'd killed her after she had turned down his advances, and that he'd tossed her body off the cliff where it was carried out to sea. The jury deliberated for only 38 minutes before returning a guilty verdict, and he was sentenced to death. Although the 31-year-old claimed to have killed 11 people, law enforcement sought no further charges, since he was going to be executed anyway. In February of 1948, McMonigal was put to death in a gas chamber. Just before he died, he retracted all his previous statements and claimed he was innocent and not involved in Thor's disappearance. And there you have the facts. Please leave a comment down below with your own theories and speculations, and remember to like this video and subscribe to support the channel. You can also support us on Patreon. To win the chance to have your hometown featured in an upcoming episode of Cold Case Detective. Thank you for watching. Stay alert, stay safe, and I'll see you next time.